They took you in winter. Your father, the village blacksmith, gave you away without a word, only nodding in response to the foreigner's menacing question, in his dark cloak. The boy has seen 12 winters? Is he yours? Your mother wailed, but they easily pushed her aside. You didn't even cry. You had time to understand the main thing. There were 4 of you children. The drought was in its 3rd year, and the sack of grain, and 3 silver coins. The witcher tossed at your father's feet was a matter of survival for the rest. You were sold, simply, cynically, with peasant wisdom. They never called you by your name in Kaer Morhen. There, you were simply 15th. It wasn't what the ballads told, a noble transformation into a protector of humanity. It was an industrial shitpit, a wolfish winter in old stone barracks where the wind howled through cracks, a constant gnawing hunger in your gut that turned a piece of stale bread into the greatest blessing. Training was a continuous beating. Swords, signs, tactics, a fall, a blow, a mistake, a hungry sleep, weakness, death. Your comrades, boys just like you, were taken away in batches. Some didn't survive the mutations, others lay down in the grass during enhancement, their bodies carried out of the laboratory at night, like garbage. You survived. You felt your eyes change, grow sharper, your heart beat slower. Emotions, first, terror, longing, rage, began to die down like a fire without air. What remained was cold, a cold mind, cold hands, a cold view of the goal. Survive. They drilled the first lesson into you. You are not a hero. You are a tool, expensive to produce, but cheap to use. They cast you out of the fortress with a silver sword, 2 signs, and the advice, don't be a burden to people. Look for work. Work was found in pathetic places, rotten backyards of provincial towns, stinking taverns, looks full of aversion and fear. The drowners in the well of White Stone Village. The peasants collected a whole 30 crowns. You're a specialist, please help us. Of course it wasn't difficult for you to pull that bloated thing from the depths, cut off its head, burn it, hear the women wailing over the well. The smell of the water-swollen corpse clung to you for a week. The reward was barely enough for bread, the cheapest cheese, and elixirs, the necker in the innkeeper's storeroom. The creature had torn apart 5 sheep. The innkeeper threatened to call the guard if you asked for too much. You had to shoot the rat-like neckers in the dark, in a cramped space, drenched in their congealed blood and droppings. For that, you got a bottle of vodka, which you sold, and a promise to spread the word about your services. They were offended when you asked for water to wash up. It was everywhere. They reluctantly gave you a room for the night, more often in the stable. Your food was served separately, on a wooden plate. They would wash thoroughly afterwards. Children ran away when they saw you from afar. Adults averted their eyes when you passed and became too quiet. No thanks after a job done, just a hurried shift of gaze and silver tossed onto the table, not into your hand. You learned not to look people in the eye. Learned to sleep with one eye open, even in the forest. Learned to feed the horse before yourself. There were no emotions, only a statement of facts. That's the world. You are its dregs. You reached the remote border village of Podheria. The people there were poorer than church mice, but even more devout and suspicious. On the outskirts, in the overgrown forest, near an old burial mound, something foul had settled. In their words, a forest spirit that took lost adults and snatched children from their beds. 3 had disappeared in the last month. The peasants promised to gather what they could for cleansing the forest, the usual empty promise. But you had long since run out of choices. You came to the mound at dusk. The atmosphere was too quiet. Even the insects weren't chirping. The air was thick, sweetly rotten, like in a crypt's vault. You felt it before you saw it. It wasn't a noon wraith, or a vai. It was something older, stronger, a local spirit, a guardian of these woods, that had grown savage from the endless cruelty of people. It wasn't evil. It was vengeful, and completely beyond your capabilities. It emerged from the shadows, like part of the forest itself, branchy, covered in bark and moss, with hollows for eyes that burned with a cold green light. The earth trembled under its steps. You cast the Igni sign, but the first burst of flame merely washed around it, not touching it. as if the spirit was protected by the ancient magic of the place. The silver sword, your primary tool, looked like a child's toy against this ancient force. You did everything right, moved, dodged, looked for a weak spot, but it was like running around a mountain. One of its hands, made of twisted roots, shot out with incredible speed. You couldn't dodge in time. The blow stunned you, threw you against a pine trunk. You heard your ribs crack. Pain, sharp and throbbing, pierced your body, breaking through the Witcher's endurance. You tried to get up, gasping for air. The spirit loomed over you. You struck with your sword. The blade clanged and bit into the wood of its body, and stuck fast, tightly gripped by the dense timber. You were disarmed. The next blow pressed you into the earth. You felt weight breaking bones, the cold of moss and soil on your face. Its face, a crack in the bark resembling a mouth, leaned over you. The cold green light from its empty eyes illuminated your broken body. You breathed with difficulty, each breath scorching your shattered lungs. This was the end. You knew it, but you knew one more thing. A Witcher dies only once, and he doesn't do it passively. There were no emotions, no fear, regret, or anger. Only cold, crystalline calculation remained. All your energy, all your pain clarity, every last remnant of life force, still smoldering in your broken body, flowed into one fire. This wasn't just the Igni sign. This was your entire being, forged into a flame of vengeance and professional pride. You didn't cast the sign. You spat it out, with all the strength of your failing lungs, with the last spark of your spirit. An arrow of white-hot fire, far brighter and denser than the usual, erupted from your palm straight into that crack mouth, into those cold green eyes. This wasn't fire that burns wood. This was pure energy, discharged wrath that struck the very essence of the creature. The forest spirit froze. Its green light flashed bright white, then red, the color of true flame. The Witcher's fire, amplified by the desperation of death, raged inside it. A sound like the crackling of 1,000 dry branches rang out. Its branch-like body became webbed with cracks, from which heat erupted. For a moment, it turned entirely into a torch, lighting the forest with a ghostly, dancing light. Then a loud crack, and it crumbled, collapsing to the ground in a heap of smoldering charcoal and ash that smelled of burnt ancient magic and pine resin. You lay amid the silence that had suddenly returned, the smell of your own burnt skin mixed with the smell of the destroyed spirit. Victory. You achieved it, at the cost of everything. You couldn't move. The pain wasn't even sharp anymore. It had become vast, dark, and all-consuming, like the night itself above you. You looked through the tree branches at the pale stars. There were no emotions, only a cold statement of fact: contract fulfilled, monster dead. The tool broke, having performed its final function. It was logical. Your consciousness began to dissolve, like smoke from the smoldering ash nearby. The last thing you felt was the cold of the earth, which gradually ceased to be cold. A few days later, the villagers, having mustered their courage, found 2 piles of ash by the mound, one large, with strange charred knots, the other smaller, human, beside which lay a bent silver sword. They didn't understand what had happened, but the forest stopped taking children. In their stories, you are not a hero who defeated an ancient evil at the cost of his life. You are simply the Witcher who didn't return, and that was the only truth that interested them. You remained nameless, simply a tool that cracked during its last hardest job.